Recent Talktarians. Recent Talktarians.
There are at least 3 publicly available Bluebird films, maybe 5, including the Shirley Temple Oz pastiche from 1940 and the 1918 silent classic by Adolf Zucker, as well as a 2013 version with Adam Driver. And the 5th adaptation is the 1976 joint production between the Soviets and the Americans, a children's fantasy shot with American actors in Moscow. This is the 1908 version. I'll bring these up more often. All the Bluebird films are supposedly made after a book by Maurice Maeterlinck, a Flemish Belgian from the Symbolist movement. But if you look for the Bluebird fairy tale, it goes back on paper at least to 1601 by a supposed Madame d'Aulnoy. Most of the tales around the world about anything blue go something like this. There was a world before the color blue. Then there was a blue thing, usually a blue bird, and everything changed. It was very alluring, and afterwards everything we saw differently. However, with this Bluebird, and I'm avoiding certain spoilers here, came the blues and muddy waters. There was a time very recently before the color blue. In Homer's Odyssey, for instance, the sea is described as red like wine, and the sky the color of honey and mead. And without a blue mask upon the sky and the sea, the waters and the stars were instead the colors of brilliance. Some say Homer was simply blind, but I'm not so sure. Color blindness is consistently a male condition, where the supersighted humans with 4 cones consistently are found to be female. Often from blue and green eyes, and able to see millions more colors than the rest of humanity. The colors beyond infrared and before ultraviolet. Able to distinguish the wonderful forests of the earth. And then, Project Bluebird. MKUltra was originally named Project Bluebird. It was approved on April 20th, 1950, and in August 1951 renamed Operation Artichoke. And we're told evolutionarily that the advance of the third cone made it possible for us to see and distinguish various fruits and poisons within the forest. However, this is the root of the Egyptian cyan green and the difference between new blue indigo. A new shade of blue was recently discovered, in fact, for the first time in over 200 years, since 1802. In either the accounts of the antediluvian period according to the Gnostic mystics, and in the science theory of the last major extinction, accordingly, there are parallels to draw about any sort of Armageddon and the life forms and forms of consciousness that were destroyed and the ones that survived. Both have tales of fascinating prehistoric monsters. Both have the tales of giant vegetarian beasts and of apisthoconch leviathans. Both wrestle with something beyond the terms of their understanding. People give mysticism a hard time for using metaphor, and give science a license for it. But scientific deductions are all metaphor. If this, therefore that. There are limits to the abstractions, which are fantastic. But it's not literal. It can never be literal. It must not be. It must never be. And when you think that way, it's less offensive to use these symbols and equations to define physics, to look at these huge concepts. And more approachable. Some of you have heard about blue, for instance, being a color that you dispute all your lives. Most of you, in fact, have heard some variation of this claim. Why is the sky blue? Why is the sea blue? It's because the other. Or neither are true. And does the other person next to you see blue the same way? Do we all see blue the same way? These questions have been asked by your teachers since you were 3 or 4 years old, just to pry open your mind. It's a mental exercise. Bacchus, or Bacchus, son of Jupiter, otherwise known as Dionysus, the god of many names, the last of 12 Olympians. The Vacusian cult of souls feed the dead through blood offerings, where Bacchus acts as a divine communicant between the living and the dead. Associated with the fig tree, he who impels the world tree. This interpretation explains how Nisa could have been reinterpreted from the meaning of the Kabbalistic world tree of life to the name of a mountain, the Axis Mundi. or the World Tree World Mountain. During the Celestial Civil War, Bacchus took the throne of his aunt Hestia, the virgin goddess of the hearths and the fire altars. She was saved by a donkey from rape and remains in the fires of Mount Olympus. Before Dionysus or Bacchus, Hestia ruled from her throne. Vrda and Vrdaha in Sanskrit, meaning wise ones, from experience. In Atlantis, women ruled. We at least now know that the great cities of the giants, such as Baalbek, were administered by these Amazons. There are many cultures of matriarchies, not just in myths. From the Nordics to the East Asias, in Australia and across the Africas, the matriarchies have ruled until the 19th century, and in many parts of the world, they still do. Herodotus called these supersided women warriors Amazons, and their rite of passage required a taboo involving a single mastectomy. Today you will not find many temples to the goddess Hestia. In all the homes that have not yet been forbade from constructing them, you will find fireplaces to be adorned in her mantle.
Recent Tartarians.